this is Cam from IGN, and I'm here with Ben Thompson, the creative director of Hearthstone. And we're in like a little mini Hearthstone museum here on Blizzard's campus in California. And Ben has been kind enough to offer to give us a little bit of a tour. We're going to go year by year through the development of the game.
Yeah. This is the museum here on the main campus. It's something that we get to change out regularly when it comes to all of our different games. We get to celebrate all of the different franchises here at Blizzard. This is the 5th year anniversary for Hearthstone, and as a result, we wanted to celebrate the last most amazing 5 years that Hearthstone has enjoyed and really share with visitors to the campus just some of the art and things that have been attributed to it.
So this is super good timing for me, because I just happen to be here when my game is the game. So, indeed, yeah. So let's go. We're actually not going to start year one. We're going to start pre-launch.
Yeah,
like some prototypey kind of stuff.
Let's take a look at that. So
this is not the Hearthstone that I know in any way, shape, or form.
It's not the Hearthstone anyone knows, except maybe me and a handful of people when we started this whole thing. So early on in development of Hearthstone, we spent a lot of time asking questions, mostly, really trying to figure out what is the best take on a digital card game that we had to offer, not only as a team, but as a company. We loved digital card games. We still do. We feel like they're extremely compelling. We feel like they're a lot of fun to play. They're admittedly one of the nerdiest forms of games you can play, though. I think most gamers, even hardcore gamers, feel like cards with a lot of numbers and text on it is just it's a bridge too far. So with a game like Hearthstone, we wanted to do what we could to kind of friendly up that experience, make it very accessible, make it very fun, make it very over-the-shoulder appealing. So all of what you're seeing here is kind of a 1st and 2nd and 5th and 10th and 30th best take at what that could take. You know, how does the board look? How do certain pieces play? What
and you wanted a physicality too, right? That's
absolutely.
That's in all of this as well.
We had a lot of conversations early on the team of like what makes a digital card game compelling, and it ended up being the answers were a lot of what makes physical card games compelling. Pack opening, looking at the cards and going to the most powerful card in there. We had a lot of fun conversations about things that we experienced as card players, like tearing open foil packs and smelling that. And swear to God, some of the people on the team could say they could tell the difference between certain sets based on the ink.
Smell-o-vision hasn't actually come to Hearthstone
yet.
So
no, it's not something that is there. So we had to look at things like pack opening and figure out what's the most celebratory version of that we can come up with. How do they differentiate from set to set? How does that talk about the vibe?
Those animations are incredible.
They're one of the most things
every time a new set comes out, it's like, what's it going to look like this time? You guys always outdo yourselves.
It is definitely a trial and error on the part of the effects team, and they almost always outdo themselves, and it's one of the most fun things to do.
So how many iterations, at a rough guesstimate, before you landed on what Hearthstone should actually look like?
A good number, I would say enough to occupy me for a couple years, for sure.
All right, so let's move on to launch.
Sure.
So there's no actual just classic set bit,
no, it's really just focused on like year one. It was kind of where we started here. So year one, what we've got is like Curse of Naxxramas, Goblins versus Gnomes. This is where we started to talk about not just what a game like Hearthstone looks like, but how do you expand on that? How do you do so in a way that feels both approachable, reasonable, and yet at the same time adds depth, if not complexity, to a game like Hearthstone. I think, so start with Goblins versus Gnomes. Goblins versus Gnomes was that was the first one that actually changed the way we thought about the vibe and personality of Hearthstone as it was shown to the world for the first time when you consider that was the first cinematic where a song was introduced. And since then, almost all of the cinematics have had a song as a part of them.
Goblins and Gnomes. Goblins and Gnomes.
That was the inception of that. And it really helped add a voice that had been missing from, or was really only additive once we put it into how people felt about Hearthstone. When you look at Curse of Naxxramas, now we look in the game at one of the first times that a real, true, distinct difference between something like World of Warcraft or Warcraft proper and Hearthstone was really developed. You looked at the big villain at the end of Curse of Naxxramas, and you got Kel'Thuzad. Kel'Thuzad had a personality all his own. We didn't want to lose a lot of what made him cool in World of Warcraft. We wanted only to add to it. He had such a personality about him that he had this almost bad-mannered player type of feel to it. He was really snarky, he was jabby. Wasn't mean, but he definitely let you know he was better.
No! Your turn is over! My turn now!
And that definitely set you up for some of the boss encounters to come, because that really set the tone.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, cool. Let's do next year?
So year 2, we still haven't quite hit a rotation yet, but it encompasses League of Explorers, Grand Tournament, and Blackrock Mountain. So we're still doing the adventure expansion-based kind of release here. With something like the Grand Tournament, we wanted to kind of harken back to things from World of Warcraft, the idea of a tournament held out in Northrend, but we of course want to put that Hearthstone spin on it. So rather than just being a place where you would expect warriors and paladins to do a lot of the showing, everybody got involved. You got Murlocs riding frogs, you've got night elves on, your beasts.
And so yeah, Blackrock Mountain was like a bit darker, a bit more of a like fire and brimstone kind of expansion. Then Grand Tournament is taking something from WoW and doing a lighter kind of different take on it. And then League of Explorers is probably like one of people's favorite sets from this era. Because not only did you introduce the League of Explorers, which had profound gameplay implications, but they were just such a cool cast of characters. And this is like one of the first times it really felt like Hearthstone was adding to the world of Warcraft and adding to the lore and like doing its own thing.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely still very much based in the world of Warcraft, the land of Azeroth itself. But to your point, whereas the others took a spin on something that very much existed in World of Warcraft, here that encompassed just the idea of a league and Brand Bronzebeard. And then after that, all bets were off. The idea that we were introducing Lee Starseeker or Reno Jackson or Sir Finley Murgleton, all of these became very seminal Hearthstone characters, something that found their life only in and of Hearthstone. And later, in many ways, have been appropriated back into World of Warcraft, which was very cool for us to see and had a lot of fun seeing it too.
So who's your favorite explorer?
Oh, my favorite has to be Elise Starseeker.
Oh, really?
I'm a huge fan of Elise Starseeker.
Okay.
I really like Reno Jackson for who he is and the character that he brings, but Elise Starseeker is such a great, complex character with all of the leadership abilities that she shows and just her unending tolerance of Reno himself.
It's so true. All right, what's next? All right, so year 3.
Year 3 is where we
big changes
began.
this year.
Yep, year 3 is where we began starting to introduce set rotation. So we
got
started with
Whispers over
Whispers of
here.
the Old Gods. Whispers of the Old Gods was the first one to kind of take that on. That's why the Kraken. So you get, the Kraken is the animal there. It had a lot of tentacles. We felt like that'll hint to Whispers of the Old Gods without giving anything away. Whispers of the Old Gods was, to that date, the darkest expansion we'd ever done. We still held to our precepts of old, which was it's a light, charming, whimsical, epically charming, fantasy world, still set within Azeroth. But we do want that kind of latitude to be able to swing into the dark when needed. In doing so, we wanted to be very much toe the line. When we're dealing with the old gods, they're very dark, they're very sinister. We wanted to treat them with a certain amount of respect. At the same time, we wanted to start throwing things in that also have tentacles, but are a lot more cute and cuddly and kind of playful as well. So that was the one that first toed the line and really helped set the bracket for how dark or how light we wanted to set together.
And also, just with the set rotation, this set was able to have a really big impact just because you lose a whole bunch of cards. So it's kind of started that tradition of like big change, not just a new set, but just big meta changing as well. And the old gods themselves are just bomb cards, right?
They're super fun. There's a lot of fun things that you could end up doing with them, and it's definitely one of the things that helped inform design going forward with the kind of craziness that you can ensue in a certain set. The idea of like Praise Yogg, showing up all over Reddit and other places has been really fun to see and continues to this day.
Now read a quick prayer to Yogg, and we're going to see what happens.
All right, let's go.
Oh,
Boom!
okay.
Good start.
All right, so what else we got in year 3? We got Mean Streets.
Mean Streets are here. One Night in Karazhan is over here as well. One Night in Karazhan was one of the places where if League of Explorers strayed with the characters, not being what they were or even present at all in World of Warcraft, One Night in Karazhan was the set that for us really kind of helped personify how much can we bend what's already there. The idea of, there is a tower, it's personified in one of the most powerful mages to ever occupy Azeroth, Medivh himself. But there's always been that sense of players of WoW going through there's a giant chess set, there's a bunch of stuff that is cool and feels very magey and magical, but the why was always there, like why is there a giant ballroom in the middle of this mage tower? So we started to ask our questions of what would a younger Medivh have been like based on all the evidence of what we're seeing in this tower. And we started to kind of accommodate this more partyish, younger, very
Playboy
sure
kind
of
of,
himself.
yeah,
just a fun-loving guy. And of course, this guy's going to invite over all of his closest and dearest and most powerful to enjoy the parties and the atmosphere that would be thrown there. So we figured, what's the era that helps personify that sense most? Disco.
Yep.
Let's just go all in. It is, until very recently, I would say, my favorite cinematic and favorite theme song.
Right.
I'm a sucker for the 70s, and I think a lot of us were having a lot of fun with it.
That was such a great kind of hard left turn.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this is where we're going. Awesome.
Delightful surprise.
Yep.
Another one of
Totally.
the key tenets of the game that we felt really were shown to their best there.
All right, next year.
This is one of my favorite eras for Hearthstone personally. Is we've got Kobolds and Catacombs, Knights of the Frozen Throne, and Journey to Un'Goro. These three sets continued on the theme that we've already talked about. This idea of taking what's established in Azeroth, be it a specific race, a specific time or place, and just kind of putting it on its ear. Try to do something new and different with it. We look at Kobolds and Catacombs, and really we saw that as our love letter to tabletop gaming. The idea of gathering around and slaying the bad guys or beasties while gathering the loot and getting out of the dungeon before they, in the case of WoW, respawn. So that was a real fun take on a lot of that, focusing mostly on kobolds, because who better to delve into dungeons than those who are better at building it than anybody else.
Very Hearthstone-y as well.
Yep, kept it very much linked into that.
Yep.
Knights of the Frozen Throne was one of the most interesting at that point in time, and still has informed a lot of major design decisions to date, based on the fact that we've been hearing for a long time, hey, when are you going to introduce a new class, to Hearthstone, or a new hero? And we aren't ready to do that. It's not something that we wanted to take Hearthstone to. However, we totally love the fantasy that something like Death Knights brings. So we wanted to do that in a way that felt very Hearthstone too. Let's introduce it and let everybody be that. So the idea that all 9 heroes had a chance to be Death Knights themselves was a super fun twist that we had a blast creating Death Knight versions of something other than a warrior or a paladin, and how that worked. It was a lot of fun. Who was your favorite?
Shadow Reaper Anduin.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I just, you combine it with 0 mana hero powers and just the burst damage you could do. But, I mean, Rexar was really cool too, because that hero card just improved over time as more beasts got added in. So, yeah, it was incredibly strong towards the end.
I like Valera the Hollow from a completely art-centric standpoint.
And also, from a gameplay standpoint, it's really interesting. I mean, Rogue have so many cheap spells, and just being able to double things up, and
this giant wraith, with all sorts of weapons.
Yeah, very cool.
And then lastly, Journey to Un'Goro, because dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Who doesn't like dinosaurs? Really and truly at this point in time, yes, we were exploring some different mechanics with the idea of, how do things evolve? How do we move that into adapt? What does adapt take on in terms of a mechanic itself? And at the end of the day, when somebody mentioned dinosaurs, Un'Goro was the obvious place to find them. And, every 12-year-old us loved and continues to love them.
I mean, the dinosaur set was something that you guys have been kicking around for years before you did this one, so that was kind of like a long-term plan, right? So
it had shown up on the whiteboard a lot when we were doing set determination and figuring out where we're going with it. And Laurel Austin, who ultimately did the key art for a number of our sets, but very much this one, cleared her calendar to make sure she got this one, because she's also a big dinosaur fan. So it was awesome to be able to bring that to her.
Very cool, very cool. All right, now.
What were we, year 4?
Year
5. So here we've got the Witchwood, Boomsday Project, and Rostacon's Rumble. Each of these in turn also put some twists on things. So we've got Year of the Raven, which is a nod a bit towards kind of ravens in the wood and the idea of Witchwood. Witchwood was a lot of fun because it had this almost fairy tale vibe. You were seeing some kind of grandmother and the wolf type of feel to some of the things that go bump in the night. It was definitely meant to feel, we wanted to talk about how we evoke the words like spooky and haunted. We didn't want things that were like corrupted or evil. That was Whispers
Just more
of
of
the
a fairy
Old
tale
Gods.
kind of idea.
Exactly. We wanted something more lighthearted there and how to go about that. And that was a great set to explore with that. The single player in this was particularly fun because this is the first time we introduced entirely different heroes with which to explore the adventure. Previously in Kobolds and Catacombs, we got to do it, but it was with the classes you were very familiar with. This introduced new archetypes that were super fun to play with and would inform where we go later.
Yeah, I really love Tess in that.
She is a seminal favorite.
And I also really loved you stumbling around in the woods.
Ah, yes, the very first announced video. A lot of fun on a golf course here in Irvine, past hours. I think I found something. Check this out. The Boomsday project was particularly fun for everybody, but the art department as a whole had some of the most fun with this because it really begged the question of how do you display science in a world based in fantasy and magic? Science definitely has its place in Warcraft, but it's really relegated to tinkering and gnomes and kind of creations of that nature. We wanted to talk about, well, if a druid's a scientist, how's that different than a warrior? And how's that different from a warlock? And the Boomsday Project and Dr. Boom himself helped define that in a way that felt a lot of fun. So that was
and you guys got to do more hilarious videos like Peter and Dave and the chicken and all that stuff.
Peter!
So
production value went up a bit.
I feel like Hearthstone, like it's outside the game, is really finding its voice with some of these intro videos and just ongoing, you know, videos that act as like supplemental material or just to get people excited about what's going on.
It's an important way for our community to get to know us a little bit better.
Yeah, that's right.
I think that's an important part of any relationship between game developers and our players is that sense of really learning who the team is. As we are learning who our players are through the comments and feedback and things that we get, it's important that they know where these things come from. It's not one person, it's not even 3 or 4 people, it's a team every time. And every time that team undergoes some changes, the game itself evolves as well. And it's a really fun and organic process. There's the bomb from that same short announcement. Rostakon's Rumble was a fun take on the idea of these different, you know, focusing on gladiatorial combat. Again, going back to a very famous and particularly popular area in World of Warcraft with the Gurabashi Arena. But then, sort of like we did with Karazhan, it was almost a question of like, why is this thing here? What purpose does it serve? So we go back in time to the idea of the heyday of the gladiatorial arena when Rastakhan himself would oversee, you know, these mighty battles within for supremacy. Really, at that point, for which troll tribe was the strongest. It ended up being a lot of fun, and we could figure out ways to put in unique characters like Captain Hooktusk and Matt Dixon's take on her, which is a very Hearthstone-specific thing. But even talking about Shirvala, you know, somebody that is an actual Loa of the troll people in WoW.
All right, so, and then we're kind of almost caught up.
Kind of brings us basically to the current year. So here we have Rise of Shadows. Rise of Shadows is the first of 3 sets for the year 2019, or the Year of the Dragon, wherein our attempt here is to tell a singular story across 3 sets. We'd never done it before. It's something we'd always talked about. The idea of a League of Evil became something almost immediately we wanted to do upon creation of the League of Explorers. As soon as we had a band of good guys,
yeah, makes sense.
Always got to have a band of bad guys, right? Everybody's got to have their yin to the yang. So if there is a League of Explorers and they are as popular and as fun with our fans as they are with us, who fights them? Turns out the League of Evil does. And the League of Evil basically being comprised by a number of villains that we were introduced to over time. Dr. Boom, Hagatha, all of these characters, even one in the form of Madame Lazul, who shows up for the very first time in the Whispers of the Old Gods cinematic only. Ended up being a lot of fun callbacks for us and hopefully for players as well. The story has been a fun one to tell. We've had a blast talking about the formation of the League and ultimately their stealing of Dalaran in a way that was maybe unexpected by many, to ultimately where they take the floating city of Dalaran over the dunes of Uldoon, and what is their goal there? And that remains the big question as we await the arrival of the single-player content, which is due out very, very soon, and players will start to understand just what the goals of Reform are indeed. With this, we'll leave us with the last set of the year. It's one we cannot wait to reveal to people. It is a super exciting set, and it's going to be one that really brings to a close what's been an awesome story.
Can't wait.
Neither can I.
Should we play a game?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's go.
What's your deck going to be?
Reno Mage.
Ooh, Reno. Okay, let's do this.